We're going to go through a bunch of stuff today related to just what is so critical for texting in cannabis. We'll cover a couple things. I'll just go to the agenda here. So we're going to go over why is telecom making things so difficult for cannabis? How are messages routed across just the telecom ecosystem as a whole, inside and outside of cannabis? How do charges and fees work in telecom? The escalation of filtration over the last, call it 2 years. Before that, it wasn't really even much of a problem. What is 10DLC and why was that narrative very false, or turned out to be? How real are the fines related to folks like T-Mobile and some of the escalation tactics over the last year by carriers? Solutions for filtration. We'll go through a couple strategies. There's 3 to 5 different versions that you can use on Alpine. You're not stuck into one bucket or another. It's kind of all about your risk profile. And then how to attribute conversions effectively. There's a ton of fluff and attribution inside and outside cannabis, but especially with a down market right now, it's very common to be misled about what is actually converted. And people are trying to hang on to budgets, sort of thing. So we'll cover that. I think just having this open conversation where I take you through everything that we've learned, and I think it'd just be really helpful. And then at the end, I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible so that we can have a Q&A and I can answer anything that might be more specific. At the bottom of your Zoom webinar, there should be a Q&A button where you usually mute yourself and stuff like that. And you can ask any question throughout the process. And then at the end, I'll try to get to as many as I can. So I really appreciate everybody showing up. Very excited to take you through this. I think it would be really transparent and great for everybody. So speaking of transparency, I put together this slide. I think it's just really important to understand where we come from as a company and what matters to us. So we started as a data company. It was all about surfacing and cleaning data. And then after we found out that a lot of the systems in the space were very much Windows 95 and not really caught up to, normal blue chip platforms, we said, hey, how do we make this actionable? And we started building the messaging pillar of our platform. From the very beginning, well, actually, I'll start here. So, and at this point, we've grown this pretty substantially. We now have 37 million unique contacts across clients in our database that are being actively messaged. The non-unique number is absolutely ridiculous. We have over 100,000 campaigns that have been run. All of this is in under 2 years. So we expect the growth to continue. However, we care about growth, but we care about your growth. So, fundamentally, just from where I sit as an executive, messaging revenue is not something that is very conducive to a startup's exit, right? So messaging revenue typically has very low valuations. It's very variable. There's ways to change that, but for us, that doesn't affect us. Our business model is not reliant on your volume of texts. This is very important. We do not give staff incentives or sales goals related to text message volume. So there's no hey, you sell this package, you get a bigger spiff, or you have more credits, and then we can make this hidden margin fee or anything like that. I'm going to take you through how telecom works from a cost structure. How that pipeline moves money throughout the system all the way to a carrier at the end of the day. And then hopefully that'll give you some insight on what's going on right now. So our goal is to delight customers with targeted messages, with intelligent software, regardless of channel. I don't care if you send 5 messages a month and they drive all the revenue. We also have the flip side, which there's a lot of customers that completely ignore that, and they'll send 3 to 4, 50,000, 70,000 plus person messages a day and just hit them relentlessly. As a consumer, I don't feel that is right. I would rather have intelligent messages. So we'll get to that. But if that's your strategy, you can certainly go that route. So I'm going to start with the fundamentals. So this is a great graphic. You have client-facing solutions. So right here, you can see You have Alpine, you have Mow Engage, Airship. These are a little bit more blue chip. Spring Big Weed Maps, Philo, not sure how to pronounce it. But you have, your basic client-facing solution. So these are all the platforms that attempt to take telecom and repackage it in a way that is more targeted, more sophisticated. It's not about just buying phone numbers and like sending one call to send a message. There's a lot of nuance here that we're going to go through. Folks like us that are consumer-facing, client-facing, they then build into platforms that are listed here. There's many of these. I put the biggest ones here that matter. So these are telecom API platforms. So Cinch, Telnex arguably has a monopoly on cannabis. There's a lot of cannabis vendors on Telnex. Twilio used to have a lot of people come, I think it was January, February, March 21, Twilio made a 24-hour notice window and kicked off over 100 vendors, not individual clients, vendors with hundreds of clients. So there was multiple weeks where people were down. Luckily, I got a signal earlier. We were off of it immediately, so we didn't experience downtime. But to be honest, that was a stroke of luck. And there's not any reason for anybody below this client-facing line to give anybody else above there notice as it pertains to cannabis. So with the U.S. federal stance on the plant, unfortunately, there's a lot of gray area that comes with that as a result. So anyways, Cinch, Telnex, Twilio, those are all considered telecom API platforms. You have engineers that build platforms on top of these. They make it easy to do stuff that would be more complex, one layer deeper. Each of these is going to have minimum commits if you want lower pricing. By default, Alpine is much lower than a Twilio or any of these providers as a default state, even before you make commitments or anything that's larger where we can work off that. Exclusive direct to carriers. So these are huge minimum commits if they'll even take your call. We're talking millions a month plus, easily 5 million plus, right? There's some nuance to that, but for the most part, if you're going to do this in a big way, you can't really go direct to these guys. And you also don't want to, when you're talking about building a cannabis specific platform, it kind of having this extra layer here gives these other guys with direct connections to carriers a little bit more of an excuse, narrative. They can move and I don't know how to say this. They can basically diversify their risk across the other subs. And if they have a problem with a cannabis message, they'll just flag it, make it these people's problem, and they will never actually even see the client-facing solution at the end of the day on who this person is and who their clients are. So there's just separations layers there. On top of huge minimum commits, they have very heavy engineering burden. You're basically building Cinch, Telnex, Twilios on top of these. Very key specialty as well. So as an example, Cineverse is basically a monopoly on AT&T with a direct-to-carrier relationship. There are other people with that, but if you're sending a message through Twilio that goes to an AT&T device, it's gonna go route through Cineverse. I mean, it's almost guaranteed. So there's a bunch of nuance there where you have these exclusive direct to carriers that all have different layers of filtration. They have different rules. They have different acceptable use policies. And so there's different flagging depending on where it's routed throughout this entire chain, which makes this very complicated when you have something that these carriers don't want you doing. And I'll explain what that means in a second. So then you finally get the carriers. And then I did put in some Canadian guys here, TELUS, Bell Media, Rogers, right? It's important to note that even though the federal stance is changed up there, there is a lot of these folks that honor and use pipelines that are controlled by non-federally legal market players like AT&T and T-Mobile. So they do follow that path, and I'll show you why. And then you finally get to the end consumer. So first, we're going to go over what is 10DLC. Let me make sure I'm on the right page. What is 10DLC registered traffic versus unregistered traffic? So this has been really interesting. Basically, we started with no no registration. That didn't even exist until recently. The only registration you would have is possibly going to buy a short code, right? Short codes are great because they have tons of throughput. You can basically message hundreds of thousands of people really, really quickly. So those are used by, Disney and the like to really get things out quickly that have huge scale. The problem is registration takes a long time. It costs a lot. And there's way too much for a 1 to 3 store operator in cannabis, just to give you an idea. And it's really easy to filter and flag you because you've registered. So that's kind of the big thing with 10DLC is it was promised as, hey, you register, you tell us who you are, we'll give you lower filtration rates, lower fees. But the flip side is true is once you're registered, it's really easy to get flagged. And as we go through how you get flagged, you'll start to realize how that works. So over here on the left, you'll see unregistered traffic. This is what a majority of cannabis texts actually are. Even folks that say they're on 10DLC or whatever, promotional texts basically have to be on unregistered traffic. I won't work too much around it, but there's higher filtration, there's higher fees. And when you're flagged, the benefit of being on unregistered is that you can become invisible. Whereas on 10DLC, you cannot become invisible. Once you're flagged, those phone numbers are burned. You violated basically their registration policy. And that's a big deal. So registration you'll see over here is usually an EIN, some kind of corporate validation, website, contact info, what URL are you sending to when you send messages. So as an example, a lot of registered traffic in the space, and you see people, getting away with it for a little while, is for registered traffic, but that is only for non-promotional messages, non-promotional intent. So things like this: thank you for your purchase, your order is on the way. You might have a link in there that's approved that goes to like On Fleet's thing that tracks, where is that order on the route, as an example. This is okay. For the most part, those registrations are fine. That's totally okay. All promotional needs to be on unregistered. There is nuance there where part of this process is 10DLC, but we'll get into that. So how is a text sent? This is very fundamental, and this is going to relate to costs. So I put this link in here. What is a segment? But I'll just do the blurbs here, and then I'll provide you with the resource link later so that you can read up on it. We have a whole blog on it with a bunch of examples. It's really nice. You can also look up to validate that, we're doing what's right for you and not pulling the wool over your eyes. That's the phrase. And you can go look at Twilio or any major telecom player, like look outside of cannabis. This is how they charge and how they send messages. So back in the day, if you remember, like Nokia phones with Snake on them, that game, those texting has been around for a while, and the protocol has not changed. So we're still working off of the same protocol from many, many years ago. So what happens is texts are basically sent using Unicode bytes. I don't want to get too technical, but essentially it breaks down into like code. So you can see right here, this is a character, a special character. It actually breaks down into this Unicode couple of digits here. So it is not one character, it is all of these characters combined to make this one special thing. The same thing applies with an emoji. So when you see this, one message segment is typically 160 characters or 140 bytes of Unicode. Everything in charges boils down to segments, everything. So all these parties in that flow I showed you before, that's how they get paid. That's how they charge. It starts with segments. The devices that are older, to give you an example, if you remember, you might send a very long message to a friend or a family member, and it would come in and it would make multiple bubbles, right? It would say like, this is text 1 of 2, text 2 of 2, text 3 of 3, right? And you remember how it was separate messages. That still is what happens to your iPhone. when a message comes in, it comes in like that, and then the iPhone will reconstruct it and make it a single bubble so it has a nicer user interface. But if it didn't do that, you would see every segment separated like you used to a long time ago. So things that separate segments quicker and make 100 or 160 characters less per segment is when you use special things. So if you send something like this, you have a new message from your friends at the Green Standard, URL, reply stop to opt out. This is one segment. It's less than 160 characters. And by the way, you actually have less than 160 characters because there's a small amount of that 160 that is used by each telecom provider when you're routing and doing all this stuff. There's like a header basically. So you can see this is one segment. This is 3 segments. The reason this is 3 segments is because it has emojis and the character count is a little bit longer. So you have normal character count of the normal text, and then you have emojis, which, as you can see over here with this special character, are actually multiple, they have to reconstruct out of Unicode to show those special characters. So this is actually 3 segments. It's not that much longer, but it does get the consumer's attention. So just, check that out. And then over here, you can see this is 2 segments. It's because it has the emojis, but it's the same length essentially as this. So another thing to be aware of is these special characters like the N or these curly quotes here are actually much longer than regular quotes. So to the telecom providers, you can double or triple your bill by using the wrong quotes. We have some safety mechanisms built into our system where the wrong quote might get swapped, but obviously there's hundreds of characters. Not all of that is covered. So make sure you use things wisely. So how many messages can be sent per second per phone number? Because you have a limit to how much these phone numbers can send. With a short code, you can blast 100,000 people extremely quickly. With normal phone numbers, you can only send, there's a couple variances to this, but 90% of the time, you can only send 1 message segment per second per phone number. So if you have 40,000 people to send a message to, that queue is going to be very long if you're using 1 number. Not only that, it will show to the carriers, hey, you're sending out a blast message on a single phone number. It'll bury them in the queue, and it'll be much easier to flag you because you're going to be sending over the same message over time to a lot of people. If you send the same, if you send from your phone to a friend the menu of your local dispensary, that's fine. It's a single message coming from a device to a device that you have probably already communicated to. You're not blasting hundreds of people at a time from a single number. This is peer-to-peer messaging. Application to person messaging, ATP, is different. We're an application. We allow for, scale. There's a lot of things that you need applications for to trigger messages at certain times, all that stuff. So that's completely treated separately. I just want to cover that. So what do people do? They use phone number pools to send faster. So they'll take a group of people, and that's, you'll take 200 people maybe. That's what I think is a good limit. Some people like to spend less. They might take 600 people and put them on a single phone number. And then that phone number can go through 600 people. Let's say it's 1 segment, 600 seconds, and you're done. But to do 40,000, 100,000 people very quickly, you're going to need a lot of phone numbers. And generally, we apply 1 phone number to every 200 people. The other good thing about this is the people that get messages will get the messages from you to the same number that they're used to, and not 15 different numbers, which could be really weird user experience. So that's that. Another thing to note is on 10DLC, if you are on 10DLC, you get basically a maximum of 49 numbers. You can increase that, but there's fees associated. And those 49 numbers have faster throughput. They can send more messages per second, or MPS, as most people refer to it. So prioritizing stakeholders is a great way to put your leadership, whoever wants to see text quickly, at the top of the queue. So you can go to your settings page, go to team members, and then add people's numbers and emails and stuff to that priority queue, and it will put them up front. That's not to say they won't get the message quickly after, depending on the scale you have. But if they're number 120,000 in line and you want something sent out, they might be delayed if they're at the end, right? So why doesn't this just work all the time? I mean, that's the biggest question I get from internal staff, from clients. It is so frustrating. Not the question, but just the fact that it cannot work all the time. And here's the real reason. So, and why are carriers even doing this to begin with? So there's real spam issues causing havoc to them. Bot calls, I'm sure you get them all the time. I get hundreds a day. They're so annoying and they're escalating, right? You get phishing security texts. So that's where somebody says like, hey, this is, my staff gets them all the time from random numbers. It says, hey, this is Nick. I need you to go buy some gift cards at Best Buy, whatever it might be. And then they go do so. They give the gift cards away. There's tons of attack vectors that you need to protect yourself from, and the carriers do not want that liability. So crypto scams, another one. So filtration fines, telecom vendor restrictions have shifted over the years to prevent these bad actors from escalating. It really is not about cannabis necessarily. Most of the stuff that has been implemented has nothing to do with cannabis. Some of it has, but cannabis is really caught in the crossfire is the point here. So how is it caught in crossfire? 10DLC is a big one. So this last year, carriers said, hey, you got to register for phone numbers if you want to do 10-digit long code phone numbers. That's what 10DLC stands for. So your normal phone number, right? Not a short code. So if you want to use these and you want to send blasts out, use 10DLC registration. This is great. So works fine for order notifications, PIN code texts like 2FA, verify, your Chase bank account, whatever it might be, right? You're about to send a wire, you get a 2FA message. This also works for delivery for clients of ours like Leafly, right? Powering order delivery notifications, all that kind of stuff. No problems there. Now, there is a problem if you go off scope. So I'll cover that in a minute. So carriers do not and will not allow registration for cannabis promotional messages due to its federal status. It's not going to happen. If you happen to get it through, that was glory time right after they open up 10DLC registration. And I'd be really surprised if you weren't banned by now. There's been tons of manual audits and stuff that have happened as a result of bad actors trying to push the limits. So we'll cover that. And carriers in general don't want anyone in the industry to send without being registered, or they'll have the bot calls, phishing, security checks, all the problems at the top that we listed. So they want you to register, but you cannot register for cannabis promotional messages. So that puts us in the crossfire. And they got to slowly enforce that. They can't just throw it over to 10DLC because they would lose a ton of legitimate traffic. So they're trying to port that over time. So what gets flagged and how? Image recognition is a thing. So the image recognition is a thing. So the more advanced bots will pull an MMS message image. It will scan it for brand names, maybe a picture of flower or some kind of cannabis product. And again, like, some of this stuff goes through and some of it does not, because some of the carriers and some of those people in that giant matrix I showed earlier have different filtration layers, different flagging mechanics. So there's no cut and dry here. So there is brand name recognition. We have seen MSOs get flagged where they cannot put their name in the message, or maybe their logo is easily identifiable. Keywords, so cannabis is one thing. You can see down here banned things like cannabis, dank, edibles, flower. Those things are going to increase the chance of you getting flagged, right? They're very easy to spot for a crawler or a bot. The other thing is that people don't get is they might send text that says something that's just like, check out our deals. And you can see deals is here, or like, come in to see our Christmas promos. It doesn't really matter. If we're living in an age where machine learning is very easily accessible and has gotten light years ahead in the last decade, it is so easy for an ML model to scan your text for promotional intent. So inside and outside of cannabis, if there is promotional intent, it has a higher chance of getting flagged. It doesn't, that's why it's not so cut and dry with the banned keywords. That's a big thing that I wanted to discuss. Link shorteners, if you're using Bitly, if you're using Linktree, there's a bunch of public link shorteners where you can go do things to track marketing. They're great for certain things. These will not work when sending a text. They will get flagged almost immediately because the carrier's bots cannot go through that link and then do a bunch of magic on the other end. They don't know who you are. It's Bitly, right? We've done tons of tests related to this. So what you can do is do something like this. So this is 97% of text now at this day and age. So you have an MMS logo. You can test out the chances with your logo and what you want to put in here. There are people I've seen that have MMS messages with a full menu in them and they don't get blocked for 3 months, right? And then, somebody will say, hey, I see my competitor doing this. Why can't we do this? It's just luck of the draw. And I'll get to that in a second on how things get flagged because there are many ways. But you can see this example here. This looks really nice. You get a new message, you click on a link. Pretty simple. I'll also go over this in a second, but the health of this domain, what domain this is matters. The IP address that this domain points to matters, the server it's on essentially. What the history of that server and IP address is, what is the metadata on that page? So meta description, does it say like, hey, click through to see cannabis, right? Like it's gonna go to this link and the intelligent scrapers from nice carriers are gonna look at that and go, is there cannabis content on this link? So it's very important that this needs to be clean. All right, so let's see. If you still get blockages, what our company does is we will take the, what we'll first do is we'll try a domain refresh because it's free to you. We incur that cost to buy a new domain and attach it dedicated to you. You're not beholden to the other clients on the service that might be pushing the limits and wreaking havoc on your server and stuff like that. So all your messages are isolated to your own server with your own IP address, with your own domain, with your own phone numbers, and all that stuff. So this is kind of where you can do some ninja moves here and you can get invisible to a carrier again. So if you are registered traffic, doing what I'm about to tell you would do nothing because they know who you are. You did a registration with your corporation. They know what phone numbers are assigned to that. If they find cannabis content on those numbers, they will ban the corporation, all the numbers underneath that, and you will not be able to register new numbers. I've seen this in politics. I've seen this with dentists. This is not a cannabis only thing. So anyways, one of the things we do though, is if you're on unregistered, you do not have a corporation on file with carriers with these different people in the system. We will start with a domain refresh. So you will change whatever might've been filtered, like maybe you had a keyword or promotional intent in the notice message that gets texted with the link and the reply stop opt out. So we'll refresh the domain, we'll refresh the notice message at the same time. And then the next day you try to send again. A lot of times this works because they haven't gone all the way through and looked at everything else. Here's where it doesn't work. You refresh the domain. Let's say you did that after, or let's say you did that before you changed the message that was the problem. So like if your opt-in message says, hey, come reply wire yes to opt in for deals, right? When you refresh your domain, it's still sending out that message. It's going to notice that it's the same thing. It's just a different domain. And then it's going to flag that new domain because it knows it's the same party, right? You can't do that. That's not going to work. And then, by the way, if you rebirth everything, which is the second thing we do if it doesn't fail, we'll refresh all your digital assets. This includes the server, the IP address, like everything that is on the page when you click the link, right? Because there might have been cannabis content there. You could have done a custom header image that got flagged, whatever it might be. And, to be honest, part of this is the fact that we give you a lot of transparency and ability to change things. If you look at some of our competitors, they will force you into, you have to have these 7 message types are the only things you can send before they click the link. And then once they click the link, they go to this exact pin code structure, and you cannot change that. And you cannot put an image of your brand on top of that pin code structure. It's going to look like this for every client, right? So there is a way to do this, you know, with low filtration. It's up to you how you want to go about which one you pick. So we'll get into SMS, MMS right now. So everybody used to be on SMS. That's what we recommended. That's what a lot of people were on, and they were texting like, hey, here's my entire menu, and there was no problem. Early 2021, this all changed. Fines escalated. Filtration got a big boost from AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile types. Not so much some of the smaller guys, but the main guys. Most warnings and fines have been sent to SMS, not MMS content that we know of and that we've heard, and we have our ear to the ground constantly. It's easier to get flagged due to for TCPA in the US, you have to notice the customer of who you are when you text them. So here it says, hey, we're green standard, you know, whoever it is. The problem with that is now you have brand names in text, and it's very easy to identify you. So that's where you move towards identifying yourself in the image instead of the text below it. And I see a lot of questions coming in. I'll get to them at the end. Thank you for posting those. So that's why you move to putting your logo or identifying yourself here. Don't put Jane in here. I think this is an example of just somebody's name, but this would be like Nick, see what's new, yada, yada, yada. It's a little bit more personalized, so it doesn't get flagged as easy. And then you just have the link. And this also looks much nicer. As a consumer, like I can put more in this cool image. I can drive people to click on it. Just a little bit nicer. There's a couple of things to note here. The image size needs to be as small as you can make it. There are some carriers that start blocking messages if it's over like 1 megabyte as an example. So you want some small stuff. You also want to try to use JPEGs. You can use PNG files if you want with transparent backgrounds. The problem with that is you can see here, this is a JPEG. It's just, I mean, this isn't a real example. We Photoshopped this, but this would appear in a message bubble on your iPhone or Android. And depending on the device you use, that bubble's color might be different. So if you use a transparent image and you have your logo that's green here, and it might be inside of a green bubble, it's going to be really hard to see this image. So try to use JPEGs. Try not to use cannabis terms. I see a lot of people, just to be honest, like get away with, you know, stuff in their logo and stuff like that. Again, it's just going to be dependent on how what your risk level is across the board with your notice message, what you're changing, how often you're refreshing things. It is just not that cut and dry if you want all the customizations. And I'll show you, like, if it was me, what I would do. What are MSOs doing who have the highest level of filtration, because they have the most blasts with the most users going out. It's a lot easier to spot them, right? So I'll go over that time for questions. So what solves all these challenges? There's a couple options: a Captcha intermediate page with a button redirect, an intermediary pin code page, which stops the manual human audit, and then no protection, which is pretty much only available again after post-federalization, legalization. But that will also follow most likely Bev alcohol rules, which would require an age gate opt-in. So text your birth date to confirm your opt-in. You could also gather the age gate on the next page after the link, like you do on your website, most likely. However, you cannot have a yes, I'm 21, over 21 button. You have to have actual birthday collection, month, year, date, that kind of thing. And you'll probably have less filtration after federalization, which would be great. I'm counting down the days. So next you have the Captcha age gate. So since you can't send raw text anymore, this is where a lot of people landed. You send a message, it has a link, you go to this page, which says, you know, you could have an age gate, are you over 21, whatever. The point is that this page right here, this domain, the meta information, the content on this page has nothing to do with cannabis, right? It's for when the bot from the carrier clicks this link, they come to this page, and then they just go, there's no cannabis, cool. And then the button here on our system has some sophistication. It cannot be clicked after a certain amount of time. We look at IP addresses. We look at all this stuff to make sure that like when you're clicking on the message or when the crawler clicks the link and clicks on the button, hopefully we can stop them there. It's not foolproof. There's very smart bots that act like humans, so it's not foolproof. But that's the base version of filtration avoidance. This is going to avoid everybody but advanced crawlers and human auditors. Okay. And then once you click open message, you get the page, which can be limitless, as you know, no problems there, right? The second option, PIN codes. So a lot of people did not like these being instituted by force, but you know, there's some people that have done that. We have thought about doing that, especially now that filtration in the last month or two has really escalated. So we started with this. You have the option of last 4 digits of your phone number. The risk here is a human auditor, right? You click the link, you come here, you got to put in the last 4 digits of your phone number. What does that mean? You don't have to remember or create a PIN code, which is complete pain. Then drops your open rates, which is really bad. Conversion goes down. But it does, so it makes it simpler with last 4 digits. You submit that, it goes right to the next page. Any PIN code option, once you submit it one time, you do not have to submit it again, unless you change browsers or computers, devices, that kind of thing. And that's pretty typical. You log into Facebook from a different device, it's going to be like, are you sure this is the right person? So we do the same thing. So one PIN code and done, as long as you don't change devices. Then you have the other version, which is more intense. It's send me my PIN, which does happen over 10DLC. So this is where there's a little nuance with the sales narrative in the space, where they say, oh, we've solved it with 10DLC or whatever. This is really what they need. And it's not a full solution, but it's as close as you're going to get right now. So you have a message, you click the link, it opens up a page that says, hey, to verify, we need to send you a one-time PIN. You send the verification PIN. Your chance of getting filtered on this, there's a chance of getting filtered on this left device here is still where it is on any other form of the last, things that we looked at. We looked at this one. It's all about this message getting filtered, all about this message, right? So this still has the same chance. Nobody has solved this. This is the same risk level across vendors, across everything. Send me my verification PIN. We then send a PIN code over 10DLC, which is totally fine to do, from a different number to that person. They get the 10DLC PIN code. They then when they hit the send verification, sends it to them. This page then says, put in your PIN code like this. They put in the PIN code and they go to the next page and they don't have to do it again. This is the most protection. And the difference here is this one, a human auditor might know your phone number. So when they get that on their desk, check out this message, is it good or not? The crawler found that it might be bad. They just put in the last 4 digits of your phone number, goes to the next page. Some carriers do not have this capability from an audit perspective. So they don't have your phone number, which is bizarre, but don't ask me. So this is going to be your best bet. Why is this your best bet? Because when you hit send verification PIN, we're going to send a PIN over a different number that carrier and human auditor does not have access to their phone. So that's where you get around it a little bit. And then we now know that you're not the human auditor like this one might be. So we can let you through to the pages a lot quicker. We know you're not the person. Here's where that breaks down again. What if one of your competitors, just like Instagrams and cannabis, sign up to your loyalty program or whatever, and they go here and they report your message to spam? They can forward it to a number, reports it to spam. This is just as common as it is on Instagram, probably less common because it's harder to do and most people don't know how to do it, but that's what they do. So they'll go in and they'll just repetitively spam report you. The second you get a lot of spam reports, all your assets are done. You got to do a refresh. That's just where it is. There's nothing we can really do to stop that. We don't get the spam reports. They go direct to the carrier. They go around the entire ecosystem. So that's your last risk. So if it was me, I would do this. We've done tons of analysis on PIN codes versus non-PIN codes, all this stuff. the conversion rate is relatively the same, and it's even better conversion rate after they do the pin the first time, because now they don't have to do it in the future. They go directly to the page with the real cannabis content that you want to show them, the menu, the deals, the links to your shop. I know we're running out of time here. We're real close. What have MSOs been doing? This is a real chart from our finance department. Email is green. This is an inflection point where a lot of filtration started to happen. You can see people are still climbing, but we're also climbing as a business and doing more SMS and MMS just naturally because people like to have it as a channel. But you can see email just taking off. We've had tons of MSOs move to just email, got completely rid of text, had zero loss to revenue or foot traffic. And we're going to get to attribution in a second and the false narrative around that. The pin codes for text, the 2FA option, this one on the right, I would go with that. That's what a lot of people are going with. Future plan, the age gate protection, that's what you want to do to prepare for federal legalization. Just assume that this is going to happen, is you're going to need to start growing your birth date opt-ins ahead of time. If you do not have birth dates, I would start collecting them in your sign-up forms, wherever you can. Going to be very nice when the toggle is flipped later, right? And then hopefully when the toggle is flipped, we don't have to do the URLs on the landing pages. You can just send raw text again, but we'll see what it looks like. And then back to the credits and tokens thing, those people are going to get destroyed because you're now going to have to go back to just charging for segments like we do and being transparent about it. So one of the other solutions is our Waterfall. So you can send a text. If it gets blocked by Verizon, we'll send the email to that same consumer. And then you only send multiple omni-channel messages to when they're blocked. The problem with this, the shortcoming, is what we already covered, which is if you get a false delivery report from Verizon and says, hey, we delivered it, and they didn't, we're not going to drop down to the next channel because we have no idea. So there is that nuance there, but it's very helpful. It does hit a lot of low-hanging fruit to use Waterfall. Measuring true ROI. So by default in Alpine, under advanced settings at the bottom of your campaign creation, there's an advanced settings. If you open that up, you will see that our attribution window is 14 days. 14 days is very low. 99% of marketing platforms I've seen on this planet use 30-day attribution windows. And that's so they can fluff their numbers. I think it's big misdirection. I personally would not enjoy it as a client, or being in the marketing department. It just really takes the narrative down the wrong path. So in our system, you can click this window. I moved this down, but this is what the dropdown would say. You can uncheck what you consider a conversion. So if it was me personally, I would not consider after a text is sent to be applicable. Like, I might have sent you that text. It might have gotten a false delivery report. You might have never read it. Like, you might have gotten the text, but that doesn't mean you clicked the link and opened it and got past the pin code and got to the landing page to then read my deals. So why should I attribute revenue that guy was going to come into the store and buy some pre-rolls anyways to that platform? That makes no sense. So anyways, we have 14-day attribution window. We think that's pretty fair for most channels. It is different for direct mail. We won't go over that, but basically once it's delivered to the like USPS tracking is delivered, we start the attribution window there. And then it's a little bit longer because they actually get their mail out of the box before we can think that they read it, right? 14 days is default. You can change it to whatever you want. 1 day, 2 days. If you're doing a 2-day promo, why would you have a 30-day conversion window? That makes no sense. So you can change that in the system. Here's some cool stuff. You can screenshot this, or we'll put this recording somewhere. So won't go into it, but you can see that these are real reports, real messages. Oh my gosh, real messages. And you can see when you hover over conversions in our reporting, it'll say what action did they take before converting. So you can see most of the time, 70% of it is after they were sent a text. So our competitors are going to show you this. That's pretty much it, right? Not a lot of transparency. So I would look at open text. So open in our world is after they get to the landing page to view the actual message and read the real thing. Open is not click the link, got to the pin code page and left. So open to text after clicking a link on my landing page, like maybe my shop button, whatever, I would consider these. So if you look at these, here's the non-fluffy revenue generated at a total cost of $87 on text versus email, $1.58. You saved $85 you can use on future campaigns, and the non-fluffy revenue was $8.90. So very close. Obviously, email is the winner here. So I would heavily consider moving to email. It's what a lot of people are doing. I'd also set you up for native apps, which, if you have a password login to a native app, they're gonna have to set a password. They're gonna have to use an email like a normal person. For example, if you used phone number and password, phone number might get changed. You might lose your phone. You might have to swap carriers. Then you can't log in because you can't get your 2FA PIN. So you need to collect emails if you're not doing it, and diversify. Native apps. So great communication channel. There's some uplift on getting people to opt in, but opt-in rates are really high. Engagement's high. You now have a new shopping portal where people can shop, and you can track that, and they can see their deals, and they can see their messages and all their omni-channel messages in one place. Tons of cool stuff. Order history, reviews, you name it. We're escalating this. Off the top of my head, I think the number is something like 30%. Somewhere around 30% of our client base has a native app with us. And here's why. It's your app, it's your brand, it's in the store under your logo. There's no marketplace competition. So there's no, hey, let me go, I don't know, to Weed Maps, and I'm going to promote Weed Maps, download my app, sending push notifications. They're opting into push notifications there. When you decide to not use Weed Maps anymore, you just lost all your opt-ins. You got to start from scratch. And now Weed Maps, or whoever it is, don't mean to pummel them or anything, but now they can just leave your opt-in there. And then that consumer using Weed Maps or these other marketplace apps, they'll share that opt-in with your competitor, and they'll send them their deals. And you help them build that up. So I would just be very wary of the motivation behind these marketplaces. On our system, you get your own app. If you decide one day, hey, I don't want to use you, I got this custom dev agency, absolutely use our APIs. They can build out all this stuff with our APIs. And you can have your own custom app. That's just a huge lift. So we're offering a super discounted app that you can have that works with everything. And by the way, if you leave us, you have your own Apple and Android dev accounts, Google Play accounts, where these apps live. We simply would swap out the code base for your new app that you want to use. You keep everything. There's no problems there. So I would notice any issues with campaigns after knowing some of this stuff, to reach out to your CSM with the campaign ID, submit a support ticket through our site. We'll look through it and do the best we can. The problem here is that we can't just call up a carrier and say why did this not work? They will just send back a blanket thing that says it's cannabis. They're not going to tell you how to get around it. They're not going to tell you any strategy around it. Even, the companies that we work with that know we're doing cannabis, they can't get through to those people either. It's not a thing. So screenshots are very helpful. We can help you reset assets. We can help guide you to 2FA pins. We can do all that for you. But at the end of the day, we're doing something that carriers don't really want you to do. They're trying to prevent non-registered traffic from getting through. And that's mostly due to spam bots and other things. Cannabis has a little on top of that. So now we're going to open up Q&A. I know I just talked forever about some pretty advanced stuff. Hopefully I made a lot of sense. Let me see if I can